That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You missed all that? I just said record.
I'm sorry. Rafi just alerted me that I forgot to hit record. So we've had a bit of a false start. I apologize.
Very nice.
But we all heard it. We all heard it.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Laura.
Oh, so I guess I'm probably the second oldest. Would be my
Let's
guess.
not talk about age. We're
I know.
all young.
Right. We're feeling young, yeah. So, well, I've been researching and writing and really working as I think as a social activist for the last 20 years on behalf of the child-free choice. And it all started with a book I did on child-free couples. And then I did another book after that that goes deeper into some social and cultural issues that really relate to the child-free choice and some of the struggles society still has with it. And for 10 years, I ran a longitudinal study with 25 child-free women that I recently completed. And I'm in the process of writing up, and hopefully we'll get it out early next year. And today, with International Childfree Day, it's someone who started running it in 2013 with help with panels and volunteers for the last 9 years. Today is year 9. And so today I've been busy with all the events and activities and outreach and contacting people and chatting with winners, and one of which is on our panel today, but I won't say who she is. I'll let her tell all of us herself. So I'll leave it there.
Well, speaking of which, that's the perfect segue, Margaret.
There.
Hi everyone, so I'm Margaret O'Connor. I'm in Ireland, so it's 11 o'clock at night here, so I'm after a very long, lovely, relaxing day, so I'm trying to be alert and together now. So yes, I am absolutely honoured to be International Child-Free Person of the Year 2021, which is really mad. So yeah, that's very cool. So I am a counsellor and psychotherapist, and I set up a specialised counselling service called Our Kids for Me for people in Ireland, but I suppose working internationally online, allowing that to happen, which is really great, since just 2019. And I started a podcast last year of the same name. So I suppose things are a bit slow in Ireland, or we're catching up, we'll put it that way, and we are catching up, but there's very little service, kind of specific, I suppose, services or information here in Ireland, so we're trying to address that. So yeah, so really, really delighted to be here this evening in such esteemed company, so thanks very much for having me.
Rafi, your turn.
Hello, I am Rafi, the host of Not a Mama Life podcast. I guess I'm kind of new to the advocacy of being child-free by choice, or child-free, just because my journey started in 2019, obviously, though I've lived it because I'm, alive. But I'm so happy to be here and amongst this amazing panel, and excited for these bigger conversations. And this year, I'm even more inspired with these events than I ever have been. So I'm really excited.
Great.
Great to have you on the panel and being part of the conversation, Rafi. Therese.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Schechter. I am a documentary filmmaker. I just finished the much anticipated documentary, My So-Called Selfish Life, which I've been working on for like 5 years or so. I'm very excited about finishing it, because now we can start taking it out to people. And that is incredibly tied to what we're talking about today, because I am definitely an activist for child-free issues. And I really look forward partnering with groups, with organizations, with taking it in a lot of different directions, because child-free issues are super intersectional, and there are a lot of ways to take that child-free identity and take it to some issue of your choice, because it hits a lot of things.
Very excited about the film. Can't wait to see it. Okay, so let's start with a broader question to start with, and I want to just, I suppose, touch on how much progress we have actually really made. So obviously, Marsha, you've was, at the forefront of this going back to 1974. And you mentioned before about, where we're at now. How much progress do you think we've really made in the child-free space, and what people are thinking, what people think about the child-free choice?
Well, I laughed about it because I said, where are we? It seems like I'm still at the beginning, but we're not. I mean, we have reached so many more people internationally. The books, there was only one book when I started this, my Bible, The Baby Trap, from my darling, I know. She died too young from cancer in her 50s, but this is the woman that started the whole thing. And if she was alive today, she would be blown away by what has happened and how people like Laura Carroll has, done so much for the child-free movement. But you know what, as good as it is, it's still, we have far to go. I mean, in the second book that I wrote, I researched internationally what's going on, and it's pathetic. People still can be killed if they don't have children, or divorced in some cultures for another person if they can't carry a male to term. It's a pathetic situation in some parts of Africa. I interviewed a doctor there who, if she ever dared say, I'm child-free by choice, she could never be a doctor again. So they would consider her to be, quote, a male. Go figure. So we have made strides without a doubt, and we have so much more to go forward to reach. People like Therese, whose documentary is going to touch more hearts, is so important to us, because we need more media people. Today, did you see on the Atlanta of weather forecast?
The weather forecast, yes.
Yeah,
that was very cool.
So I was like, I was almost fainting. I said, what is this? Is this real? So we need more of that, and we need more exposure. Your magazine, Tanya, I mean, it is a professional wonder. How you did that is beyond me. It's truly wonderful. Of course, Laura and our little darling Margaret and Rafi and so many other people out there that are not here today are contributing. And I do see a future, and I still see a lot of torches that still have to be carried.
Yeah. Laura, what is your opinion on this? And do you think, what do you think it's going to take to create that change that we need?
Well, I think I look at it mostly just from the last 20 years of what I've seen. And when I first started putting word out there to find child-free couples to interview for a book I was interested in doing at the time, all I needed to do was put it in the newspaper advertisements, and my phone rang off the hook. My new email, that was a new thing then, it went berserk. My answering machine became, full within like a half an hour. It told me there were a lot of people out there. So 20 years ago, there was no platform for this voice, for these voices. And so these people were living silently in the tributaries of society, and someone was finally saying, oh my God, somebody wants to talk with us. And so once in 2000, the internet started to, it began, and in the last 2 decades, it's just exploded. And I think the 20 years, how far we've come, has become of that revolution online. That opportunity for exposure and education through this digital platform has really gotten us to where we are today. And it's a lot further. So I agree with Marsha, there's a long way to go. And I've surveyed this a few times over the years, just with people online. What the biggest ones, I think, was almost 900 people. They would say that we've come a ways, but we've got a ways to go. But that ways, 20 years, it's a blink in the larger social context that we're looking at, even the choice to be able to not reproduce, that even of it itself is a new thing in the larger social cultural scheme of things. So I think I'm optimistic that watching the expansion continue, that we really will see some of the change we're looking for. Some of it we'll talk about later, but for me, I feel that we're now in like a mature place of the first stage of a social type of movement, right? Where we have our voice out there, we're educating, but the second step really to move into is we need to act more like a collective. and a collective that has some goals in mind, like changing laws, going after certain situations to fix them, which means we need to be about action and do it in a way that, you know, we see nonprofit campaigners out there doing to make change. So we need to organize. So I hope we talk more about that, because I think that's what we're moving towards, that because we've evolved, you know, through these last 2, 3, 4 decades, we're ready.
Yeah. And I think as well, given that we have all this extra technology available to us and social media, and we have so many more voices, I would like to think that that's going to bring a lot more visibility and a lot more change a lot faster than it may have done, because we
Absolutely.
have so many more voices, so many more platforms, and so much more, you know,
Right.
from one book to where we've come now,
Right.
where we can go in the next 5, 10 years. I think it can just really take off and amplify pretty quickly.
We don't have to rely on waiting for the right news story to hit the New York Times to have it kind of come out, you know, online. You guys see it, we do it, you know, it's boom, it's out there, and we can do it so much faster. So it speeds it along. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into our first, I suppose, big topic. And I want to talk about educating girls, and I suppose not just girls, I mean children in general, but I mean it's probably more of a conversation that happens with most girls. And I know growing up, you know, we're raised to become mothers, we're given dolls as babies, everything. One day you'll be a mummy. You know, the books we're read, the movies we're shown, the fairy tales, everything is geared towards motherhood. And I know I've had conversations with people about it, and they went, oh, you know, I hadn't really thought about this before. And the messages that I was giving my daughter about when she would say, oh, mummy, one day when I'm a mummy, and people were like, oh, actually, well, maybe you won't be a mummy. So I think it's really important that we give the next generation permission to have a choice. And certainly I think it's really important that parents are having the right type of conversations with their children. But what simple things do you think we can do as a movement to either educate that next generation or educate parents about what this conversation needs to look like? Who wants to jump in on that first? Rafi?
I can jump in. I think outreach and collaboration. I recently did this and put an invitation out there for mommy bloggers and parents and creators that are doing parent like content. And so I am putting myself out there to be available to have conversations with them, whether it's a print, a podcast article, whatever it is. But that's what we have to do. We have to put ourselves out there and be open for those collaborations and those connections, and go in with, like Laura was saying, go in with like an education mindset and a goal to be an advocate and to educate. So I think continuing to do that in whatever way, even if it's to outreach for one specific topic, as far as how to talk to your daughter, or what if your daughter says this, how do you respond? You know, very specific. But I think just outreach and be willing to collaborate. I mean, there's so much beauty in collaboration. There really is, whether you are both child free, whatever the context is, whatever the pairing is. But I recently have been doing that. I haven't gotten any invitations yet, but I'm going to continue to do it.
Yeah.
You go.
Masha?
I think, Laura, didn't you get into a school district recently? I remember you saying something about that.
You know, that was some years ago. We discussed that when I lived in San Francisco still. I lived in San Diego now for a couple of years, but with some meetups there were some people that were hot to try to get it into curriculum in schools. And we started trying navigating the bureaucracy of the city school districts. And it was hard, even hard to get to the right people, just to say, could you just add part of your birth control and sex education curriculum? Could you add maybe that you should think about being qualified or have an aptitude for parenthood, get kids thinking about when they might be ready and what does that really look like? And by the way, it is a choice in life. It was very difficult to get to the right people. So I think I'd love to see that is an example of an area of action that could be a campaign, is to get a collective of people who know how to navigate that that system. That was one of the learnings that we got out of it. And I've got stories about that in the workplace too. But for me, I think with the girls, I love what you're saying, Rafi, that to bridge between parents and non-parents, and this includes childless people too, or by circumstance, it doesn't matter. It's like to build a bridge between those that have them and those that don't. I honestly think sometimes that's one of the last stands of feminism in a way. It's like, wait a minute, how could we be at odds together? We need to, have parents understand where we're coming from and vice versa. And they're in the game because they have daughters. So for myself as a godmother and as an aunt, I try to model a life that doesn't have motherhood in it as much as I possibly can, and talk to those girls as honestly and open as I can, and they want to talk. I try to keep it on the ground with people I love and know, to the point where then that helps them talk to their girlfriends or talk to their mom, or, it's an incremental kind of thing where I've just seen that work little by little, but it's something I can do day to day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we also can't underestimate the importance of boys. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll stand in a corner. That's one of my followers.
That's a really good point too. Yeah, we don't talk about talking to guys, to young men enough either. Yes. You're right. Yeah.
When I was speaking at a high school once, and a young man raised his hand and he said, "Well, I want my name carried on." So I said, "Well, what's your name?" He says, "Eddie Smith." And the kid said, "Sit down, Smith." There's a lot of Smiths on this planet. But I mean, he said something that was real to him. He wants his name or blood carried on. This has got to stop, because I think young men need to know that there's so many other ways. What is it? No seeds, better to have deeds. I love that one. Get the seeds, have the deeds.
Yeah. Therese, you wanted to say something?
Yeah.
I wanted to just say that in my experience making this film and running a fairly large Facebook group, we have a bunch of parents in the Facebook group, and we have a bunch of parents commenting on the Instagram accounts too. And they come there with great respect. They're not there to like troll us about gender reveal parties or whatever, unless they're accidentally there and then they leave pretty quickly. But I think that having parents involved with great respect for what we're doing, they are raising the next generation of kids, and they really benefit from the conversations that we have in our child-free groups, and they can also contribute their own experiences that are super relevant for the issues we're trying to get around. And I think that historically, traditionally, pitting, working women and non-working women against each other, pitting women with children and women without children against each other. This is the tool of the man who keeps us fighting with each other instead of actually looking at the issues. I have no beef with parents. I have a beef with pronatalism.
Right.
So I have a beef with and all that entails. So I think this is also something just to be cognizant of, that we can work together. And as soon as we start working against each other, we are falling for the trap.
Absolutely. Margaret, how is that relevant for you in Ireland? And I imagine you having similar issues to the rest of us in terms of how we educate.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it's great anywhere, but the sex education system here is not good on a very, very basic level. So we're not there yet. But I suppose I am aware there's a lot of youth organizations who would do really good work outside of the school system. And I've seen some of their programs, kind of relationships and, and consent and body awareness and things like that is really developing a lot. And kind of that continuum of kind of the gender, sexuality, relationship, diversity, which is kind of, again, I'm just involved in some training on that at the moment. And it seems to me like it fits in there. We're talking about choice and awareness and in all of those, all the possible choices you can have in all of those areas. And, to me, it will kind of slot in there quite nicely. That's the situation in Ireland, and it's not blanket, it's not enough. But I suppose I think it would be a useful place to maybe start, like what Laura was saying, to just literally kind of put in. It's like you just need a slide in that deck of. If you could get it in, it would be so amazing.
The school system's an interesting one, because I know I had a similar conversation with the Queensland government here very recently, and I don't know what the governments in the US and Ireland and so forth are like, but here they won't recommend certain supplies and stuff like that. Everything is all, you have to apply for different things and stuff. And it literally, I came out of a meeting just going, my head is spinning. This is just, I don't even know where to start with unwrapping this and going, well, how do we actually get practical, positive? They were like, oh yeah, we love the idea, da, 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 but we really can't do much to help you. You have to go and do all that. And you're like, what? So it becomes, where we think like, it's just something so small that we can start with. It becomes really, really hard when you're up against these systems that have been in place and so forth for generations and generations. And this is the way that we do things, so
Right.
it's, if only we can get, I think if we get that first thing and then we can get something else, but it's really hard.
One thing I found, it's another book project, a whole nother area, but I worked in collaboration with a conservationist, Dave Foreman, on a book on overpopulation. And after it was published, we faced, how do we get this into the hands of younger people? And in the end, what we did is we went straight to professors at the undergraduate level, and we got a grant to go to them and say, here's this book, here's why it needs to be in your curriculum. So we went around a lot of this college bureaucracy, and we got to professors in Canada and United States, and we got it in at almost like over a 10% rate, which of all the ones we contact, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a lot. So we learned something on how to navigate a system, and that's something I think we could learn from in trying to navigate our school systems. And how do we got to get to know it a little better, of how it really works and how to really run in that bureaucracy. So, and that's like you're saying, it's not an easy thing that you learn overnight. It's like a behemoth. It's like the government in the States anyway. It's like huge. So, but there are ways to try to be creative.
Yeah.
I think people really want those resources. Sorry, I know one or two lecturers here, and they're using like certain episodes of my podcast, to demonstrate things that they're doing, which is amazing. So I think if there's people open to that, they will grab the resources. But as you said, it's to find them. Yeah.
Yep.
Therese, you mentioned something before about millennials. Like, are you seeing that as the younger generation has a different attitude around this and how they educate, the next generation?
Oh, I was saying that these ideas about women's roles have been around for millennia.
Oh, sorry.
That undoing, no, I'm happy to talk about the other thing, but like, I think, we talk about undoing something that is completely embedded in our society, and it has been for thousands of years. So the fact that we have same-sex marriage now is like an incredible win, and that some people can be single parents and they're not, being shunned and things like that. These things, to turn these things around when they've been so embedded in our culture, we have to do like serious myth busting campaigns and serious outreach. And I don't want to be a downer, but it's a real effort to change society.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we can do it. We have all the tools and all the brains, and I feel good about getting out there and doing it.
Along those same lines, one thing that keeps on coming to mind for me is we need to do a campaign to stop the glorification of legacy means a child. Like that example, Marcia, that kid that wanted his name to be carried on. Like, when was that implanted in our brains? Like, that's ridiculous. But not only that, a legacy can be anything. It doesn't have to be a human being. And I think that's huge, because if we remove that stigma, then we might remove the taboo conversations and the things that are related to that, especially culturally.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose, speaking of culturally, certainly in poorer countries, in very traditional countries. I mean, you mentioned Africa before. How do we help impact and how do we educate girls in particular in those well, boys as well, because they need to be responsible for what they're doing as well. But I mean, it's such a huge issue traditionally and culturally in those areas where they don't have access to, you know, a lot of girls don't have access to any education at all. I know the likes of Population Matters are doing some amazing work to help educate and so forth. But is there something from a practical everyday point of view that we can do to impact a positive way in those countries like that where they are very traditional and very pronatalist?
I know one thing I do personally is I donate to the Population Media Center. I think they do really great work on radio and in some TV in some of these poor areas where they tell stories and they're changing belief narratives by what people hear and what they see, and they get it to young girls, boys, and families. So the way they're going about it from a media standpoint, and they're very particular about where they're going, and they are in countries that are more, you know, challenged. I think we need more work like that, and they do intersect with educational NGOs for poor communities. But from what I see, the way they choose to go about it really makes an impact faster than what I've seen in other ways.
You know, an option too, a few years ago, I met the founders of a podcast player app called Bullhorn. And it is well known in Africa, India, a lot of underdeveloped countries, a lot of underserved countries. And their focus is being able to just use like a flip phone, and you just have to call a local number to listen to a podcast.
That's a great idea.
So unique ways of getting it out there, because I mean, I met these guys and I was like, this is amazing, because not everybody has an iPhone, not everybody has an Android, but their technology, your podcast actually gets a phone number and you just need an actual phone and it's local to that country. I mean, that
Wow.
I think is just amazing. And they're really good guys. Like I might even consider reaching out to them and trying to come up with something. But the fact that they have created something like that tells me that they are open to that type of outreach and that type of grassroots efforts to get messages out there.
I love it.
Yeah, that's great.
I think we really need to be allies to people in other countries. You know, we're all from US, Ireland, Australia. I'm in Canada right now. We need to be allies to people doing work in other countries. I really liked yesterday at the Childfree conference where we had people reporting in from different countries around the world, where the conversation has felt, it's felt so, I don't want to say provincial, but it has felt very American, to tell you the truth. And there's amazing work going on all over the world. And I'd like to be able to call people in more to have a platform to be able to talk to us about what they need and what we can do to support their work.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. And it could be the likes of, you know, the Population Media Center and the NGOs and those types of organizations that are already there, grassroots, doing things that we can support, provide resources to, whatever it might be, that they can then take on the ground and actually do the work that needs to be done.
I've been working with Population Matters actually, and they're great. I really like them a lot. I love what they're doing. Stuff together.
So we mentioned before about I think Teresa, you mentioned about parents and the conversations, respectful conversations around parents, and I think that's a really important point, because so often when I know in certain groups and stuff, if I've mentioned anything typical, I suppose typically it's very easy for people to criticize and jump on you and go, what would you know? You're not a parent, you know, all that sort of stuff. And we get all those types of responses a lot of the time. I think it's very important to start having respectful conversations. And I like what you're doing, Rafi, with reaching out and going, hey, you know, like, let's talk about this. I've just contributed some blog articles to a magazine that is for parents and so forth. And again, it's just about trying to educate and what it's about. Where do you think we need to start with that? Is it something as simple as outreach to parenting blogs, parenting magazines and stuff like that, and say, hey, let's have a more, balanced, unbiased conversation? Or are there other things that we can be doing to reach out to parents and saying, hey, we've got a point of view or something that may actually help you guys? Or how do we do that? Where do we start?
I think we start in the family, if there is a family. And when I say family, nowadays, that's another thing. What's a family? But if we start in a microcosm, it builds. If we can have the courage to speak to our own family, friends, neighbors, but I have a caveat here, only if they're rational and only if they're open to hearing. Because if you start getting the bully, if you start getting the putting down, and that's the time to say, I can't talk to somebody I can't respect. And you're not respecting me, so I'm not going to go any further. But to start out in a more calm way of asking, what is it that upsets you? Trying to find out, what is it? I once did that. And one of my friends said, well, I'm just jealous. You're going to sleep late on Sunday morning and I have to take care of the baby. And I said, but that's honest. And I appreciate that, So it has to start small and then, like we've done, grow.
Yeah.
If I can come in on that, I did a small bit of research here in Ireland, and I was about how women made the decision to have children or not. So I interviewed women who didn't have any children about how they were going to approach that decision. But kind of a surprising finding I got was that the process of trying to decide was not good for anyone. So whether they knew they wanted to have kids or not, or they weren't sure, nobody felt supported in it. And I just found that really interesting. So this idea that parenthood is really symbolically supported, but it's not practically supported. And like, we know parenting is really hard. Like, it's probably one of the reasons why we're not doing it. Like, we know it's hard. I'll speak for myself. Like, no, it's hard. And to respect that, and I suppose to really, try to find to be able to empathize, that it doesn't have to be this competition or us versus them, that actually this idea that everybody will and should and wants to have children doesn't serve anybody, because if you do it, then it's just an automatic thing that everybody does. And if you don't do it, then it's this weird thing. Like, that doesn't work for anyone. So I think I just found that really interesting. Personally, I didn't see that coming, and it was like, oh, okay, so this doesn't help anyone. So actually parenthood should be more supported so that people can do it and enjoy it, and it's not this hugely stressful thing. And also, not being a parent should also be supported, trying to actually balance out the scales a little bit. So I suppose if we could find some common ground that we could empathize on, it doesn't have to be everything, but even if it's just that point of, well, this idea of parenthood actually isn't working really for anyone. Point.
The only time I will not engage in any kind of conversation is over religion. I have found that to be just too frustrating. I can't overcome it, and I have to allow them to just feel the way they want to feel. It's just too upsetting to start doing a push-pull dance of I'm right, you're wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And I have to respect that you can't overcome much of the religious influence on some people. It's real.
Yeah.
I like, Marcia, what you were saying about starting with the family, or I envision when you said that, like your family at its dinner table, when conversations come up and whatnot. And you brought to mind for me that I have many friends that are moms, and they have daughters, and they're really hip to the child-free thing. They think that everything should be a choice. They seem great with it. But then when we talk about their daughter growing up, they really want their daughters to have kids. And so I then try to broach with them, well, why is it that you want that? What is it? And then helping them to see it's more about what they want for themselves when they get older. And once they realize they're putting like their stuff on their daughter, the enlightened ones will go, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, I have to help her make up her own mind. So it's things like that, to where asking, well, gee, why is it you think that way? And what if I told you, in the scheme of, pronatalism, what if I told you that belief right there, let me just tell you where that came from. And really, it's not it's not really a truth to begin with. And so to get to have that kind of conversation, to ask people why they think what they think in as respectful a way as possible, I think can get places with people that we know and love.
I think that asking the question of why is a really good place to start, because as you said, when you question people, and it makes them stop and think, well, why do I want that? And, you know, we talk about this, you know, being selfish because we're child free. Well, I think one of the most selfish thing that people can do is say, well, I want grandchildren. And it's like, it's not even about your life. Now you're projecting on your child because of something that you want. And I think the why is a really good place to start as well. Yeah.
We have to just be, we have to be willing to actually do that and to actually ask the why. So that's an example. It's a little action, but it does take some courage with people that you love, you know, to try to handle it as right as possible.
As well. Yeah.
Right.
Like we go, well, we might get an answer that we don't want to hear.
Right.
Yeah.
How to navigate it.
Have you guys heard of the Conversation Project?
No.
So
Yes.
The Conversation Project is an organization that gives you education and materials and prompts to have conversations about end of life. So an education campaign similar to that, whether it's at your dinner table or in a classroom or at, you know, whatever, but some type of education, some type of information that somebody can have to then have those conversations with family, with neighbors, with whatever. So that's kind of what came to mind was, you know, to have something for somebody, not just tell somebody have these conversations, but give them guidance on how to have these conversations.
Yeah. I did create a little parents guide that is a PDF that people can use and stuff as well. But I think it needs to go probably further. We need more of the different types of things as well, because the conversations that even as friends and having, you know, child-free friends and friends that are mothers and so forth, and them communicating with each other can be difficult at times as well. But I love the idea of the conversation project. I'm definitely going to have a look at that. That sounds really good.
There's just one more thing. We can't forget that to many parents, having grandchildren is the icing on the cake of parenting amongst their peers. Because you and I know, out come the wallets. Oh, actually, it's not wallets anymore. What is it? Oh, your cell phone and all the pictures of the grandchildren. And then, I mean, I have pictures of my dog that I show and the other kids that are in my life. But it's very competitive. And then look at the obituaries. A mother of blah, blah, grandmother of blah, 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 great grandmother of blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, that's fabulous. Well, maybe not, but that is the peer pressure.
Yeah,
it's real.
Definitely.
Question for Marcia and Margaret. Marcia, I remember that Ellen Peck and her associates did some sort of "Are you ready to be a parent?" list.
Shirley Rattle, who was the co-founder of NON, she was a parent. She had 2 children, and at that time it was like, what? Hey, what? A parent with NON, which was the National Organization for Non-Parent, and then they changed it. Nobody wanted to be a non to the National Association of Optional Parenting. So when we had her in it, it was the first time people would look at a parent and say, well, she's telling us the truth. And she wrote a very blistering book called Mother's Day is Over. And she was amazing to say what really happens in the day-to-day life of being a mother. So what was the question?
Well, I was asking because Margaret, I know, Margaret, that you work with people to work through those questions, right? And I think it's vital that just becomes a normal thing we do. Like, what college should I apply to? Should I be a parent? Like, I think it should be on the same. And I actually would love to hear more of what Margaret sort of does with her clients in this area.
Okay, is it okay to do that now?
Of course.
Sorry, I hijacked the question, but
yeah, so I suppose a lot of it is about values. So really trying to identify, like, what do you want? What are your values? What's important to you? What are your dreams, your passions? You know, what is actually driving you? And trying to figure out what are yours versus what you think they should be, or what is everyone else telling you they should be.
Mm-hmm.
even around, you know, wanting to be a grandparent, that's okay. Like if that's really important to you, but I suppose being very clear that it is your thing versus, you know, being able to own it. I think everyone, you know, I think we generally know that we'll be happier if we're doing what is important to us and what like matches our values. It's a value conflict that tends to be where difficulty comes in. So yeah, really trying to separate that out, and that can be very difficult because you're trying to figure out, what do I actually believe in? What is important to me? Just because I've been told I will always take this path, is it actually what I want to do? And then what's it like to think about not doing that? So a lot of the clients that come to me, they're kind of in two fields. So some of them will be like 70, 80% sure they don't want kids, but that's really scary. And they're actually not sure, like, what do I do with that? What does life look like? Because we don't have enough images or role model. Well, we have role models, but they're not maybe accessible to people if this is new to them. And then the other people are just genuinely unsure. They genuinely don't know, and they find it so difficult to make up their mind because everybody's telling them that this is what they should do and they will regret it, or that's what it feels like to them at the time. So yeah, a lot of it is really trying to have that objective space to actually shut the door, shut everybody else out, and give the person a bit of time and space to try and figure out what's important to them. So I think values is really at the base of that, like what is important, because if you can live your life as much as possible in line with your values, then that's a better place to be generally. Yeah.
Cool. So I I mean, I think that's fantastic. I think more of that needs to more of those conversations need to happen. And I think the value component of that is such an important thing. And what you said before, Margaret, about, do I believe that, or is it just that I've been brainwashed and I've just bought into that belief and that's what I'm supposed to believe? And there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah, it comes down to the question, if you're asking yourself, do I want children or should I have children? They are two entirely different questions. And, you know, that'll tell you kind of what's behind them. So it's always interesting to explore that.
Yeah.
This gets back to curricula and, you know, inserting these questions into things that people do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Which
applies
makes
not just this one, but particularly important in this one, I think. Yeah.
So continuing the parent conversation, I suppose, how do we show them that it doesn't have to be an us versus them conversation, or you know, we're not necessarily against parents, and like, you know what I mean? Like, how do we go? Is it just a simple case of going, hey, you know, we're not trying to attack you, we're just trying to share a different point of view?
We always have to honor the fact, if somebody is a parent, whether it's a mother or a father, or and by the way, a lot of gay couples, if they don't have children, they're not as valued as if they do have children. That's another thing that I learned. But we have to respect them too. I mean, if we're going to call them a breeder, we're not going to get much attention from them.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I find so many young people who are starting out. I was one of them. I was angry. I was so angry. Hey, I lost a job. I faced death threats. I lost 15 years of a pension because of a choice I made. I was angry, but I didn't get very far because in my anger, I reached nobody. When I started to pull back and learn that I had to respect their choice, as well as, you know, modeling what I need in my choice, that's when I changed. And the young people who are so bombarded by, what, you're selfish, you're irresponsible, why did you get married, it's ridiculous, there's something wrong with you. The result is like attacking rather than saying, listening and saying, that's a very interesting thing. I can understand how you would feel that there's something wrong with me, but do you want to talk about that more? And just make it more conversational and not, I'm right, you're wrong, you know, that kind of thing.
I think opening up that conversation is a really important.
I think too, those of us, I think we're all creators as far as in the child-free space.
Right.
I think an important thing too, like Margaret was saying, I think as brands, those of us who are presenting as a brand, we also need to present with values, because with me, I'm always taking the stance that I don't hate kids and I don't hate moms, and I'm always sharing my brand values to make the connection to who needs to be connected with me. So I think,
Absolutely.
you know, that's important as well as we all create content, is to make sure that we are creating it with those values as well.
I
Absolutely.
think to tag on that, and it's also how then we manage those platforms that reflect that brand. You know, who do we attract on Twitter, social media, Instagram? How do we deal with people who come into the conversation and who are defensive and attacking? How do we moderate that? How do we model in those content strings how to communicate when we might not necessarily be understanding each other right away? So there's some skill involved there, I think, when, you know, on those platforms. It's not like the dinner table with your loved ones. It's another set of skills. So,
And that can be its own challenge in itself, particularly on social media, where it's very easy for keyboard warriors to blast off a, you know, a response to you or make a comment on an Instagram, you know, post or something like that. And I know myself, sometimes I'll get comments like that and I think, hang on a minute, I can react very quickly. Sometimes I just have to step back and take a deep breath and go, okay, how do I want to respond to this in a respectful way? And often I'll try and be like, understand, respect your opinion, but this is the you know, and often they'll go off on a tangent, you know, that's not even what we're talking about. But it can be hard, you know, it can be hard to moderate that, and it can be hard to you know, I think you need to stop and take a deep breath a lot of the time to do that, and rather than just firing off a response, because there are so many keyboard warriors that are just so quick to attack and will hide behind, you know, this pseudonym online that, you know, and sometimes you don't even know if they're actually real people. But it's yeah, I think that the piece about brand is really important as well, Rafi. I know myself, I'm all about choice, you know, and it's about what you want to choose for you and do what's right for you. I'm not anti-kids, I'm not anti-parents, but it's all about the choice. And when you mentioned before, Marsha, about the groups, one of the things that I hate in some of these groups, the terms that they use around breeders and crotch droplings and all these horrible things. And I just think, how do you guys ever expect to get any respect if that's the way you talk about parents? It's just not okay. It's just not okay.
And, you know, I'm not going to lie, there are times that I am at my wit's end to be nice, because there still remains on Amazon a picture, one paragraph of my book that mentioned a time when I did have that feeling of, oh my God, what am I going to miss? And it made it look as if I was the biggest liar on this planet, out of context, not saying what I said next, but just showing me as being a fake and a phony. And no matter what I can do, I cannot get it off Amazon. It's there forever. I read it too. There's been some terrible things. And this is within our own family. And it's almost as if we keep on like this, divided within our own family, we're not going to move forward. Because when we have factions that say, you're not child free, you were once a step parent, you're not child free, you like kids, you open the door to Halloween. I mean, I've heard things that are so insane about people who really do enjoy being with kids. So I'm not going to lie, there are times that I have just said, oh my God, I just have to keep myself under control because I'm ready to kill them.
Yeah. And that's the thing, there's divide within the child-free community as well as to what constitutes child-free and what you can and can't do, and it's ridiculous. Everyone's different.
You know, it is true that we are much maligned, much attacked group of people sometimes by the people who should love us the most. And I get it. I get why people are so angry. I get why people are trying to seize sort of control of this issue by exerting the power of the internet, I suppose. You know, I get all of it. I just don't think it's very productive. But I know what's behind that. But also we're carrying this whole conversation online. Like, I think the child-free community is basically, it exists online. And just, you know, to go with Tanya, your larger sort of mission here, we have to get offline and we have to start doing practical things in person, in schools, in workplaces, with the government. I mean, we need to actually like step out and affect change. in that
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, Therese, you're going to see something happen when you come on the cruise that I'm hosting, because that is 1 week of a family of us together, a whole entire week. It changes lives. My first reaction to when I first walked into a NON group was, oh my God, these people are nice. And I came home feeling like 5'10" when I was only 5 feet. You know? So being with people is so infectious and so fun and so empowering for a long period of time, and not just this way. And it's difficult because we're worldwide, but I have people come in Brazil, from England, and they're just looking forward to being with their people together. That's why the meetups are so important. That's why
Right.
anybody that has a gathering where they say, come on, come to my house, and it's hard to find those people within the communities. So yeah. Oh boy, Therese.
Yeah, I think in person it's easier to connect and to get, past, not focus so much on differences. It's easier to understand where someone's coming from. And from what Therese was saying, though, too, even online, when just dealing with some difficult comments, I don't mean trolls, not those people over there. I mean, just people who are inserted in a conversation and there's disagreement. I always try to start with thinking of, where are they coming from? What are their comments telling me about where they're at in their own personal journey with their reproductive choice? So it takes kind of the heat off of it coming at you to, what does their comments really reflect about where they themselves are at? And, Margaret, as a therapist, probably knows more about really how that dynamic operates, but it's you can pick that up in an online conversations, but in person it's much easier to just go, no, why are you thinking that way, and be connected faster. So we have to get a hold on COVID so we can start to act more normally again in person. So
Yeah. I recently did a book club event, and one of the attendees, she was a co-moderator, she is doing in-person meetups for child-free people out of somewhere in Texas. And she was actually saying how she's asking people to show proof of vaccination, but she had, she's getting people to come. And so it's specific for child-free people. So
there's
I
quite a
thought that was
few
awesome.
that are around the world where the actual in-person events of child-free people getting together.
absolutely,
there's more and more of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what Teresa's talking about is getting people together in a way to organize and around a goal, right? To do something that changes something. So that's a different, way of getting together.
But we could be the Child Free Coalition from New York, where I live, that's going to DC for the big reproductive justice march.
There you go. Yeah.
I'd like us to represent as a group with our own stake in these issues.
Yeah.
Anything around reproductive rights, justice, oppression, like it's kind of a no-brainer, you guys. We don't want to be pregnant. So we don't want that. We want control. We want the services and the goods, to control our bodies. This seems like such a obvious connection. I want to pack the bus with child-free people from New York, and we all go down and we represent as child-free people to support the cause.
Yeah. And they're the sorts of practical things that we can be doing as part of this bigger conversation, as well as to go, it's all right to whinge and whine about something, but to actually take some action and do something like going to, something like that, are positive, practical things that we can do.
For sure.
Yep. I'll let you all know when I book that bus.
When is that? When is that march?
There isn't one right now. But if you follow me on social media, I promise I'm going to let you know when it's happening.
Let's move the conversation away to look at workplaces. I know I certainly experienced it when I was working in the corporate world, where there was lots of situations where I was expected to work back because my work colleague had to go and pick up a kid from childcare. I had situations where, I was expected to go to certain conferences and events and stuff. And I remember one in particular where I refused point blank to go because one of my dogs was very ill and was told, it's just a dog. It's not like it's a kid. You know, like I did when I did the child free in the workplace survey, I could not believe how many responses we got so quickly. I had like 1,000 responses in like 3 or 4 days. So it's a very hot topic. But what still surprised me was the amount of bullying, harassment, inappropriate comments, rude statements, all that sort of stuff that is happening day to day all around the world. Like there was people from all over the world commenting around this subject, and it's happening everywhere. And I'm like, this is crazy. We have laws around these types of things, but it seems to be accepted. But even from HR people who should know better, I was like, how does a HR person make a comment like that? So it's one of the things I'm passionate about, and it really gets me worked up. Can you tell?
Good. It's good.
It's to change. It's happening everywhere. And it's a very real issue for people everywhere. Where do we start? I mean, what can we do? Is it about giving resources to people on how to handle some of these conversations? Certainly we need to educate workplaces, which is something I'm very focused on at the moment, is getting resources and stuff out to workplaces to say, this is not acceptable. But, you know, is it that? Is it something else? Where do we need to start this conversation? What do we need to do? So real everyday child-free people having these issues can impact some sort of change in a positive way for themselves.
Well, I can speak to 2 or 3 situations that we learned a lot. There were 3 over some years, 3 groups of women that wanted to go to HR, and their pods, they organized, and they went to 3 different organizations. So these are 3 different groups. They didn't know each other, and I was going to connect between the 3. So they went and got into HR. They wanted to have PTO time off policies and be expanded for all the kinds of things that you could take time off for. And where they ran into problems is really the mindset of the HR people themselves. Okay, they are in the pronatalist truth, and they value parenthood time and the caregiving time more than that other time. So they don't really, in these women's opinion, they didn't even really get it enough to be able to then push through to another level to make something happen. So where we kind of landed with it was, it's almost like what we've been experiencing with the racial privilege issue. This is more of a parenthood privilege issue, that they don't see that they're the dominant. And that they don't see the inequality that really creates in the workplace. And so I think we have to get parents to see in this context that being the dominant is something that impacts everyone negatively. So it's that conversation that somehow they have to realize what they believe and its impacts on other employees that, have their time, they want to do other things with their time. So that gets back to pronatalism at its core again, is why do parents think that parenthood time is somehow more valuable? That impacts people in the workplace. So I think that's where the education, but it's that tougher education that people in HR really, really need to begin to grapple with if we're going to see any change at all in the workplace.
Yeah. It's I've done something here.
What? Really also Rafi?
Yes, she just had to jump off for a quick minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think with the workplace issues, and I have spent my entire career filling in for people who had to leave early to pick up their kids, and I would be at work till 8:30, and somehow that was fine. This is a management issue. This is poor management. This is a poor use of your staff to treat people unequally. I think that if you stop calling it parental leave and just call it personal leave, and you can do what you want with it as long as it's equitable across the board.
I think it's a great concept, but a lot of HR people don't see it that way. They see that leave is still synonymous with I need to go because my family means my kids. So we still need to dissect what that language really means to people.
But I'm going to add to that. I think that parents also get a shitty deal in the office, especially women who are not in like corporate jobs, who if they miss a day because a kid is sick, they lose their jobs. So this is all pronatalism meets capitalism, you know, all the workers are treated like shit.
Totally.
That's
Right. So, I mean, really, it's so, this is why I say like, this is a management issue, and this has to be just like somehow now, actually people can work from home and the company doesn't fall apart, even though they've been asking for it for 20 years because of so many reasons.
But in a lot of companies at the moment with COVID, the only people that can work from home are parents as well. And because they have to, but you have to come to the office. I've seen a lot of that stuff happening where people are like, I want to work from home, but I'm not allowed to because I don't have a child, which is a problem.
Maybe like a cutout thing behind you.
Yeah. Well, even if we just to take it a little further. So say if it's a management issue, how do we get management to do it better? My first instinct is say, well, put women in there, get more women in these higher, echelons. And in some companies, they're there for sure. And so I still find myself asking, well, what would that person, what beliefs does that person bring to their management style, and how they create policy and implement policy? It seems to circle back again to what kind of time, how do we value time, that personal time? Why is some more important than another? How do we get it to be seen as truly equitable? What minds need to really change? So it's that kind of conversation that it goes back again to, pronatalists, just tough, beliefs people hold that are just that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to look at, and organizations and HR people really need to look at, is redefining family, because family is no longer mum, dad, and 2.5 kids. Families look very, very different these days. And we've seen during COVID in particular, where people weren't able to have, access to their own immediate family because their mum lived interstate, or, whatever it might be. So they had to rely on this extended family and friends and community to help get them what they needed to get through, lockdowns and all that sort of thing. So it seems to be acceptable in that sort of situation. But when we talk about family, and I like to call it family, like, because a lot of close friends I consider my family.
Absolutely.
It's like, well, we need to now look at what that looks like in the workplace, because how we define family in the workplace is very different these days to what it used to be when we look at pronatalism and traditional big companies and so forth. So I think that's definitely one issue. And I think another issue is around the educating of HR people and managers and so forth, because I don't necessarily think that sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but not all the time are they aware that what they are saying are doing is wrong, it's inappropriate, it's upsetting, and so forth. I remember having a conversation, I was interviewed for a podcast about a month or so ago, and the guy was, he was in HR for years and stuff, and he goes, it's only through looking at the content that you're putting out there did I stop and think, oh, hang on a minute, I've been guilty of some of this and I didn't even really think about it at the time.
Exactly.
But now I'm more aware of it to go, actually, I need to be a bit more mindful. And I think it can start with some simple education, perhaps.
I agree.
One of our people who was looking just said it's one. I think there's a lot of push for family of origin against family of choice. That's interesting.
And that's how it's defined. It's defined as immediate family, and it's about blood relatives typically. And it's like it needs to go further than that now.
Of course.
An organization in the UK called Aging Without Children. They've done amazing work on this during COVID, and they've really, really good research findings. And like that, people, like, how do you even navigate the care system if you don't have a child to help you access it? It's really, really interesting stuff. But just another point, I think like it's a knock on. I see it, I guess, with like friends and that have kids, like they're not enjoying their time off if they're finishing early to go to a sick child or to go to a school play. It's not I almost feel like that time isn't valued. They're rushing around, and it's because the childcare system is not designed for purpose. It's not fit for purpose. They're all rushing around, and it's all panic, generally panicked. And so then if I come in and go, oh, well, I want a long weekend to go kayaking, it, like, not that I would, but like do that, but it feels very different because they're not getting quality time. So again, like, if there was actually a decent childcare system, so there wasn't as much pressure put on the workplace, then we might be able to think about these things a bit better. But it goes to Trace's point about capitalism, like, it's not, none of the systems are designed properly, which, and I know we can't fix all of that, but I suppose it's just trying to recognize, I think it goes further back. It's a big knock-on effect.
It's certainly a big issue in terms of how it's tackled and what's actually possible, I think. Because there are so many issues, as you said, like with parents and what's happening with those guys in the workplace and working from home, and like this, we can just list a whole bunch of stuff. It's like, what do you tackle first? Where do you start to improve the situation for everybody?
But I think that would be a really good area for collaboration. Who doesn't want better childcare? It's going to help everybody. And even just from a therapist point of view, happier kids make for happier future. I don't need to be this busy. Like, that works for everybody. That works for society. If so that could be an area of collaboration with parents or with other groups that actually helping here will help everybody as a knock-on effect.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to share one thing that we're doing with the film that we're trying to do in a lot of different sectors, but the goal is to do a lot of virtual screenings and to get into a lot of different kinds of communities. And I was contacted by a woman who works for a professional organization, a women's organization for big industry basically. And she's like, oh, we have a lot of women who don't want children. It's a conversation we talk about all the time. It would be really great to get our group to do a screening for us. And there are like 800 of us. And I'm like, yes, yes, please.
When?
It got me thinking, every single industry has a professional group. And sometimes it's the women's professional group subset. Every corporation has some sort of women's development program, whatever they mean by that, but it exists in every big company has that. And so there's this thing about infiltrating through the sort of back door of Childfree, getting in there and having these conversations in an actual workplace environment where maybe the HR people might want to come. So that's something I'm working on and looking forward to doing, is tackling it with, the film is a lovely, friendly experience. We want people to feel great and we want people to feel empowered. And if we can do that for the organization at Bloomberg or something, of all the women who work for Bloomberg, wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
And the men.
I love
men
that.
can come too. I don't want to leave out any.
No.
But yeah. So that's
I love the idea of getting people together who come from just different interests, different backgrounds, and somehow we find a way to unify together, something that we all can get behind and that we're all passionate about. And that's parents, not everything. So childcare is definitely an example of that. So how to find those through lines for everyone is that's a great example of how to take it to the next step for finding real change, what action can matter.
Yeah, and I love the tying in something that's entertainment as well. Film is entertainment, and it's something that everyone enjoys and loves. And if they can walk away learning one or two things that they may not have learnt before, that helps them navigate this in the workplace. I love that tie-in. I hadn't thought of that before. We maybe need to talk some more. About how we can get that into workplaces down here.
Absolutely. The beauty of virtual screenings, I'm telling you, it's one good thing that came out of this pandemic is you can screen everywhere. So
certainly, the workplace conversation is not something that we're going to be able to fix overnight. as much as I would love to see that happen. And look, I get emails from people all the time, and I get messages from people in groups around issues that they're having in the workplace. So I know it's definitely something that is happening everywhere. And if we can get to those smaller groups, so whether it is HR outside of HR, whether it is those women's led, things. I know there's a Westpac bank here in Australia, they have a group called Ruby Connection, which is all about women's issues and all that and that sort of stuff. So I've written for those guys before, which is fantastic. But I think they also need to be open to hearing those conversations as well, because some of them just want to, no, it's not relevant to our company. I had that conversation with actually the biggest telecommunications company in Australia, who have 12,000 female employees. And I remember them saying, oh, we went to their committee. By the way, the committee I found out was all mothers. And we don't think it's relevant for our company. And I'm like, really? 12,000 female employees and it's not relevant to any of them?
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And you just go, how am I supposed to get it, to get in and have that conversation? Right. Because it was shut down pretty much, from the start, which is very frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to talk about anything to do with workplace issues, problems? Someone's got some brilliant idea that's going to make a massive difference overnight. Okay. Let's move on and talk about government, shall we? Another big ticket item, I suppose, because it's one of those things that, as we know, one of my pet peeves is what I call bribery to breed, where people are getting paid to have children. It's happening all over the world. It has been for some time. It's like, oh, our population's declining quick. We better throw some money at some people to pop out some kids, we know what is happening everywhere. The government conversation is a hard one. It's a hard one to navigate because, as we've mentioned, this stuff has been ingrained through generations and generations. And we have typically very male-dominated governments in a lot of places as well. And I know particularly in the US, and just when we talk about one issue of reproductive rights, and what's happening just in that one area, it's just, it blows my mind. But as individuals, we talk about what we can do as groups and what we can do as a child-free movement and stuff. Is there something that, I think there's two separate things we need to look at, is what can we do as a child-free movement? And then what can individuals do to put their hand up in their local communities and say, hang on a minute, I'm not being seen or heard, and this is how I want you to be recognised. So there's probably two separate conversations there, I suppose. Who wants to dive in and start on either one of those?
I think maybe on the collective side, so I like academia, but research is the key. And you see, because it's like the government or the policies are behind what's actually happening. We know child-free people are out there. We know they have needs that need to be addressed, and the policies are slow to catch up on that. Governments and agencies need data and proof that these things actually exist. So I think we really need some concise, consistent research, and even that gets problematic around the definitions of who is child-free or who identifies, the terminology. I've seen that across census, even the difference in how it's measured in Ireland and the UK is different, in terms of official census population statistics. So I think maybe both on a collective and individual level, we maybe could raise some awareness around that, if you're happy to identify as that, it's important to identify that when you get the choice to highlight, that's logged somewhere, then it can be referred to that there is X percentage of the population that need to be recognized and served. I know it's boring. I like it. But
I think
they like the data. They like to have the stats and the data and the information, because that's how they make decisions.
Yeah. That's why I think if with the research, if we could get to some of these things back to the workplace to show statistically that there's inequality in the workplace in this area, okay, to put some numbers to it, I think that could be a place where we could get into some of these policy discussions. But in order to do that powerful research, you need funding. And in order to get that funding, you need to go to foundations who get what you're doing and they want that as well. So that's where really the rubber is meeting the road. I hate to say it again, but it comes down to finding people who are willing to invest in endeavors like that. So, and there have been years where I have submitted some small grants to population organizations to do some research, and they have other priorities. And so I've been thinking, well, what other foundations, looking for foundations who might want to take on workplace issues through this door. So it's finding funding, and who's behind the funding, who's really got the passion for really understanding and moving on it. So, that's just working it back to the steps to take, at least in the States, for real incremental steps to get the data. So, yeah.
I'm sort of torn, I have to tell you the truth, because I do volunteer in a very, very poor trailer park nearby, teaching English as a second language. These people, these families are my family. They're dedicated, hardworking, loving parents, and their children are the only thing that they have. So we now have a child tax credit in America. And I've been torn about that because it's been helping a lot of very poverty-stricken areas, that the kids have food. I mean, kids need to eat, but yet again, is it fair? Because there are many people who could use extra money, who are taking care of animals that have been rescued, or, it's a dilemma for me, because on one hand, I want to help them. On the other hand, is it fair?
And I think there's a difference between the people who actually need the help as well, the people that get it and don't need it. I mean, I've seen so many situations here in Australia. There a few years ago, they had a baby bonus, and if you had a child, you got $3,000. And I knew people that were going, awesome, I'm going to go and buy a big screen TV and a boat. And they didn't need the money, but they were getting it because they were entitled to it. And I've never, gotten anything from the government. So it's that, well, yeah, it's certainly in situations where they need it, then, what I mean? Like it's a hard one, because then how do you then go, well, who do I say who needs it and who doesn't need it? That opens up a whole other can of worms.
Right.
I'm happy for my taxes to go to better childcare. I'm very happy, because I think that it has a ripple effect for all of us. I don't think that just helping somebody with a child who has a job to go to. It makes the whole society better.
Yes.
Better schools. I'm happy to contribute to better schools, because again, it makes our whole society better. And yes, the money doesn't always go to somebody who needs the money, but that's kind of the little tax you pay on, on that thing. You're not going to get it 100% right, but I feel like the United States really, again, does not treat its people very well. We've seen it through the pandemic. We've seen these major gaps in care. So I feel like I'm coming off as like the socialist of the group, but I'm okay with
that. Oh no, I'm with you.
Not at all.
With you.
No, not at all. When it comes to the care,
teachers.
Absolutely.
I mean, take my money. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like this almost just happened. I almost thought, well, let me do like a child-free, like GoFundMe thing for teachers, I mean, don't get me started on the whole teacher thing. It's horrifying that we can give rap stars and football players a gazillion dollars. It infuriates me. And then teachers are barely making it, and they have to pay for their own supply. I mean, we're just completely backwards.
I agree with that. Yeah, that's happening. Unfortunately, that happens everywhere as well, because the money that gets thrown at some of those other things, to me, is absolutely ludicrous. Let's take some of that money and give it to our armed forces and our ambulances and our doctors and our nurses and our teachers and the people that are doing the work.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. That's another conversation.
Oh yeah.
It's infuriating.
No, I'm with you on.
Sorry, could I just jump back to the studies, to data? I don't know if everyone's familiar with the Michigan State University study that came out. I'm sure, Laura, you know all about it. They they redefined what child-free means. They didn't lump them into people who are infertile and people who, it was a very specific definition of child-free. And once they did that, the numbers were kind of staggering, actually.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
where's it available, Therese? Is that available online or I haven't heard of it?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, is that it
Thank
there?
you.
Yeah.
It's in the chat.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Deborah
Yeah, we
is
got some great
And
people watching.
Yeah, you can definitely read it and get in deep into the numbers of it too. I know that there have been many attempts to do studies that dissect the different decision sample groups, and thank God they're one that they were able to go all the way. And so now, there's well, that's only one study, and maybe Michigan has something, special about it. It infuriates me. So I hope that we do, because of it, see more better research that then can take it further, to take those groups and lump it into studies that say, well, get back to inequality in the workplace. How does it play out with these samples, and to start to use those labels more effectively to learn some new things. So it's a good one.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
I was just going to say, after that, it's kind of the boring stuff of like government submissions and,
Yeah.
it's repeatedly saying we're here and we need stuff, basically, to as many people as you can. I don't know how it works in other countries, but our government is pretty accessible in different ways, in that we have different levels, and we have local representatives and national representatives, and I suppose letter writing campaigns, email campaigns, and having templates, and we've gotten pretty organized on that stuff here lately. But yeah, so I suppose being organized or being clued in to those opportunities, as I said, it's not the most exciting, but it logs your existence and your need.
Got to keep your eye on the end game, the end result, because can be a long, analytical road. You got to get good analytical minds on your team.
Absolutely. And they're the hard yards that have to be done. They're the foundations that have to be built, don't they? They're not glamorous, but it's the practical foundational stuff that needs to happen. Yeah. I want to sort of touch briefly on positive media before we jump into sort of questions from everybody and close everything out. But I mean, I think we saw that thing this morning on was it Instagram or Facebook with the Childfree Atlanta doing the fun little thing about the weather, and we're seeing more and more sort of great things coming up in the media and positive media stories. What can we do to get more of that out there? And like things like films. I mean, I don't know how long I've been standing behind Therese going, when is it going to be finished? Because we just want to see it. And Max's film was out. Like we're seeing more of this, which is fantastic because we need it. But then we also need it on our TV shows and our movies and all those types of things as well. But in terms of general media and stories and things that are out there, is there anything we can do about that at all? Is that out of our control? Like, is that something we can just encourage from afar? Like, I think certainly supporting these things when they're out there. So when someone does make a film, paying and seeing it and supporting what's happening is certainly the most important first step. Because I feel like a lot of people in the child-free space don't want to necessarily pay for some of those things. And it's like someone's put their heart and soul into creating a movie. Yeah. You don't go to the movies and walk in for free. Why should you get that for free? It's crazy. But, so like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on how we can generate more positive media?
One thing that I'm doing is whenever I see something positive like that, like the clip actually, I shared it and I sent it to you, Therese. I shared it. I always promote what is valuable and what is current and what is positive. So I'll take to Twitter and I'll share and I'll appreciate someone who shared something. The newscaster weather woman that did that, I actually friended her, commented, so she sees me. So, that kind of thing. So do true engagement when you see something positive. And I think that takes us a couple steps further.
It's a simple, very simple thing we can do.
A feed spot is another place that you could find tons of articles. Feed spot.
Feed
And
spot, yep.
here's a little secret. You don't have to join it. You just see what the article is. You take the article's name and you do Google it and you find it.
Mm.
You can just put it on your sites.
Little tricks.
All right. Yeah, but media is everything right now. It's everything.
It's really interesting with International Child-Free Day. I suppose the lack of media that gets. You look at how many news stories are on every news bulletin for Mother's Day and Father's Day.
It takes time. It takes time, and the good news with the digital world is it's there, and it's expanded, and there's so many ways to be on it. And the challenging piece too is to find your lane and be always trying to be first in that lane. And it was easier 20 years ago or even 15 years ago as it was still developing. So with what we're doing, we know it's a volunteer effort. And what I like is every year it's more international. So we may not see as much of this, in your local Facebook pages, but I know it's out there in different countries, and there are people who they share it, winners share it. I've gotten some ink in European countries. So it's a slow thing. If I had, a great budget, decided to do this full time, it'd be one thing. But I think this year already, I can tell there's already several news things that dropped today, or articles. The farthest away is Dubai.
Oh, fantastic.
Dubai would never, each year there's more online engagement from different countries. And so that is a positive, is to continue to reinforce the positive. It's one reason I continue to do it, because it is a positive way to educate and inform and kind of rise above the other conversations, and not just do it in Western countries, get people and women and men from India and Africa talking about it. So
I know
like anything, it's a slow game.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I did a story on one of the breakfast shows, national breakfast shows here, and they interviewed, because it was about International Child-Free Day. But I think this year it's been a little bit different, because COVID here has taken back the headlines because of the lockdown. So I know I did some outreach on Friday about it, and I had one of the producers go, "Oh, I'll forward that to the weekend team." And I think with lockdowns and stuff, it just gets pushed out of we don't need to do that story. But it's like, well, if it was Mother's Day or Father's Day, I'm sure you would have covered something. But yeah, I think, as I said, it's a slow slog. We just have to keep pushing the agenda and pushing it out there and saying, hey, this is a thing. We need to be covering it and making a big song and dance of it when we do.
Yeah, and things like what Teresa's doing with her film, for me, it's ways to help that film be seen by younger women and younger boys and men, get it into schools to help that your platform, your creative media platform, get more people to see it, and to get it to younger people whose minds are open. And I don't know about you guys, but I think millennials and Gen Z, a lot of them I talk to, they get this, their minds are more open than generations past. And so I have confidence in them that, they see gender thing, it's very fluid to them. They get all that. They're going to get this, but they'll maybe, or they already do get it, but they're still going to face their parents saying, hey, but we want, but maybe they're the generation who go, hey, no, I don't, it's a choice, and they'll be good with it. So it's getting to that age group, I think, is super powerful.
Yeah, I think too, with the age group, they recognize it and they're honoring that choice, but it's for different reasons. Like the feedback I get from my podcast is because it's all about the environment. They're being child-free because of that reason. So that's the biggest thing I see with my podcast listeners that give me feedback, is that, Gen X did it for one reason, different generations are doing or making these choices for different reasons.
Yes. That's good.
Some of the stuff I've gotten, people have written me, it's in that vein, has been more that they're a little bit in the ambivalent camp. They need Margaret services, but they for now, be through COVID and a climate crisis too, they're putting it off. Yeah. And they worry they're into the longer I put it off, or I may eventually want them and make it more complicated. So it's kind of like a no for now is where they are amidst all that's going on.
Marsha, did you have something to say? I thought you were.
It's pretty funny. I know I think three of us are authors. Recently, I was looking at the Amazon, how much money I'm raking in from these books, which is pretty funny because we don't rake in any money. I mean, if I had written
Amazon takes most of it.
right, yeah. But I saw $425 Japan. I went,
Yay.
well, it's in Japanese money. And but at least I know it's in Japan. And then India, it said $125. It was $2.23 that I got. But it's in American money, but it's not. It's in their money that we see it on Amazon. I just thought it was funny. But at least it's getting, our books are going
Absolutely
all over the world.
Oh yeah.
All over the world.
I know.
It's just,
the baby matrix since 2012, it still sells great, and it sells in more countries than ever right now. So there you go. That's a good sign. It's a good sign.
I have a resurrection of the first book. It's just astounding what's happening.
So
yeah,
Yeah,
all
there's
positive.
really an explosion of these conversations for many reasons.
Yeah.
But I think it's really exploding. I mean, if I read one more fertility rate article in the New York Times, it's getting the conversations out there, and it gives us the opportunity to say, this fertility rate drop, not necessarily a bad thing, right? So we could respond
Exactly. Yeah.
Are we going to ask questions? I'm starving.
Yes. Sure.
Oh, Marsha,
Okay.
Marsha.
So we're gonna, we'll
Right.
open it up for questions. Marsha's oh, I love you. Okay, so if any of the guys who have been listening to the conversation, do you have anything that you want to ask of the panel?
Type it. You have to go to chat.
You'll have to unmute yourself.
Any question? Or you can write it in the chat.
Be able, yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, this is Juan.
Hey, Juan.
Ah!
I've been on the chat for a little while.
Sure have. Correct.
So
Do you have any questions, Juan?
yeah, I was wondering, because this was something I was thinking of for a while, and I think it ties into the education, which was it's just that focus of family. I think that there's a big spectrum, right, of people's choice to be childful. I'm saying childful as in like they have children, right? Or if they're childless or child-free. How would you feel if there was a book or a resource that kind of touched upon, those, like just what each of those three categories kind of detailed on, if that makes sense? Because I think the issue is trying to reach that understanding. Does that make sense?
I got it. You know what, one of the biggest problems is those words, or is it are those words? Because I have often said, child-free, are you kidding me? There are so many kids in my life, and who's less anything? So the truth of the matter is, we really don't have words that describe our choices when it comes to not having children. In fact, it's very negative. Free, we're free. Well, yeah, we are raising children, but many of us are aunties, and we have godchildren, and we have neighbors' kids that come over, and I mean, it's a very difficult thing that I have yet to have an answer to, because is a child free, is a child less, is a child poor? It's just a matter of choices of lifestyle, period. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. It's certainly a lifestyle choice. So are you talking, one, in regards to a book that is about defining all those different things that you mentioned, like child-free, childless, child-for? Is that what you mean?
Not so much defining, but just like having people be exposed to like different sorts of families that people can have.
Oh,
Like just
Kind of
trying
like
to-
examples.
like the
examples.
many faces of family, something like that.
yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think when we do define it or when we categorize it, that's I think what kind of causes a whole us versus them sort of thing. But I feel that if we look at it as no, let's look at it as an open perspective sort of thing that like you can be a family of two, you know,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
a
Laura
husband and
has
a
a
wife.
book that talks exactly
No.
about that.
You
Right.
could be a family that has children, that just happens to have children, you know, or you could be a step parent. There's all sorts of different families.
Yeah.
And you could
And-
define your family as an extension of non-blood relatives, but they are
Yeah.
family to you. You could be someone potentially who has no children of her or his own, but part of your family is someone that you've helped raise, that is a
Right.
child, so that, and
With
that's what you
thoughts.
and that's what you consider, family. So I like the idea. I
Yeah.
think you
Okay,
should do it,
perfect.
Juan.
Yeah, like
not me. I'm not doing it. How about you, Laura?
No, Juan's doing it.
yeah, it's
Come
Juan's
on.
idea.
Go on.
I think that's
I love
really
that though,
positive.
like the Faces of New York or the People of New York, like that
Yeah.
campaign.
Yeah, do it.
Child-free faces of child-free families, or just
Yeah.
faces of families. I'm sorry, faces of families.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
I love it.
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
faces. Yeah, let's do that in our spare
Definitely
time.
a model. There's definitely a model that I think comes up all the time, which is like the Golden Girls model.
Yeah.
Aging with your friends in a house in Florida. But I
got a house
actually,
in
in the
Florida.
I'm gonna live with you, Marsha.
Rafi has one too. She has birds.
We're coming to live with you guys. Make
Yeah.
room.
in my so-called selfish life, we do profile a group of people who have created their own community to age together. Not
I
in the
love
same
that.
house. They did not want to be in the same house. But and I think there are more and more of these co-housing communities that are really addressing that who's going to take care of you when you get old bingo that we hate so much. But there are some really interesting things happening in that space. So that's
Yeah,
kinda
I
nice.
love it.
And the Golden Girls all had children.
They did. Yep.
That's
Yeah.
right. And they were
Now,
living together.
they put their friends first, like for sure, I think.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Erica's just sent me
Erica.
through. Erica, did you want to ask that in person, or you just want to leave it in the chat?
No, that's fine. Yeah, I was writing out my ideas, so I didn't sound too sporadic. So you guys all seem very sort of vocal about your, choice to be child-free. And I'm someone who, I've been married just for 2 years, and I'm getting, a lot of personal questions about, when are we having children and all these things. And, I'm wondering, like, when you all started out, how did you start to talk to people about this? Because I think, I live in a liberal city and I work at a liberal firm, and I still get, questions like this. So it's just so like prevalent in society. I also just don't want to make people feel awkward, like, how do I diffuse without people making people feel awkward? Like, it's such a nuanced thing, people
I think
asking.
in my opinion, you need to feel less awkward. You need to feel a sense of pride in your choice, just like any good parent has, without the fear of hurting somebody's feelings. Why? Because we're constantly attacked for our choices and sometimes fear their reaction. But when you get that sense of, hey, this is a great lifestyle and I love it, it's just telling your truth. It's not saying I'm better than you and you're less than me. It's saying that this is what I wanted. I'm happy for you. If you love your children and you're happy with that lifestyle, great. But I want to be happy. And it's not the same goal that we have. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that pride is so important, because in the beginning I was fearful too. I was first of all, I didn't even know about myself, let alone others, but I was tippy-toeing on eggshells. Oh my God, are they going to be this and that? But after I got hell, it was like, okay, I'm going to say what I'm going to say.
But you
And I
can't
have
control what
shots.
other people think or feel either. So,
Right.
you know, you
That's-
just got to,
that's true.
you can't control that. So that might
No.
happen, but that's on them, and how they react is on them. It's not on you.
Exactly. I had a fellow child-free human do a takeover podcast episode for me, and she said a beautiful quote in the episode. She said it's a them problem, not a you problem. When
Absolutely.
someone doesn't accept that choice or gives you shit for it, excuse my French, it's a them
I've heard
problem, not a you problem.
words than that. It's all
Yeah.
good.
But I just love that quote. Like, I just
Yeah.
absolutely love that. Like, it's really them have it, you know, they have to process it. They have to deal with it. And
Yeah.
like Marsha was saying, stay confident. Hello, I got that question and I got married at 44.
Whoa.
And I got that question. Okay. So I had to educate people, not of the child-free choice. I had to educate people saying that it's not the safest thing to have a child at 44, even if I wanted one, beyond the child-free choice. So it's just a societal norm
Yeah.
that is ridiculous.
Something that some women have told me over the years too, when they've been in very similar situation, is that at work or even in their personal family lives, et cetera, is if you're married, do you mind if I ask you, you say you got married a couple of years ago, is that right?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
So it's important to, in your responses, say that, you know, so-and-so, my partner, and I have made this decision, so that it's not just you, it's like, no, we as our partnership, we've decided this is how we're going to do our partnership together, so that that comes across loud and clear. And somehow in saying that, it helped the women feel like, yeah, you know, Joe and I did make this decision together, you know, and if that's, hopefully that is the case, you're both clear about it. And if that's not the case, well, then you may not want to get into it. But if it is, it's easier to begin to discuss it if you do it as a unit.
Yeah, good point.
Sure. Thank you.
I just want to say I didn't really talk about this at all until 7 years ago, and now I've like made this entire film that I'm in.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've known that I didn't want kids for a long time, but I didn't talk about it. And my boyfriend, when I was in my 30s, who I knew wanted kids, I would keep saying things like, I don't think I'd be a very good mother. I didn't have the language to say, actually, I just don't want kids. So I would say things, I don't think I'd be a good mother. And he'd say, I think you'd be a great mother. I'm like,
Of course you're gonna say
I don't
that.
think so we broke up, which was good news. But yeah, it's only really in the last decade that there has been a vocal enough buffer group that you can sort of be part of a community and feel like you're not a complete freak, that there are a lot of people. And that goes back to what Marsha said, which is just kind of owning this identity with great pride. Like I know what the best course of life for me is, and this is it. And yeah,
my first group on Long Island, New York, NON, I put a little ad out, you know, child-free group meeting, blah, blah, blah. 65 people showed up. It was what? 65 people? Because we're going back in the days of the dinosaurs, you know, you couldn't come out and say, I don't want to have children. But I was absolutely shocked. And I think a lot of people all over the world would be shocked if they were able to reach those people who don't want to have children.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
And look, it's one of those questions that it's the next natural extension of what you do. So as soon as you get married, the next question you'll often get is, so when are you having kids? You know, I think I certainly faced that a lot, but I was very vocal from day one. And I had obviously had that conversation with my partner before we got married. We were on the same page. We were like, you know, we're not having them. And look, I found a lot of those questions came more from acquaintances. So parents, friends, or other people more so than our immediate family, because they knew how we'd felt. So sometimes it's just, you need to maybe own that and be a bit more confident and going, well, no, exactly what Laura said about we've made this decision together, and just stand by it. And if someone has an issue with it, then it's their issue and not theirs and not yours.
And if it's an acquaintance and you don't know their whole situation, coming back with an equally interesting, curious question, say, oh, so how about you guys? What are you guys doing? Are you guys going to have kids? Are you not? Have you decided? Or, you know, to keep it like in an open be curious about where they're at.
Yeah.
People love to feel like you're curious and are interested in them. And I think if it comes across with that as the theme, the deep theme of it, it won't be such an awkward moment.
It gets
as long
easier.
as long as you're genuine.
Yeah.
Right.
Do we have any other questions? Anyone else want to ask anything?
Oh, good, I can eat soon. My husband's starting.
Marsha.
I'm sorry.
Feeding without you. You could have said, go and have your own. I'll come here.
What happens when you get older? You just say what you feel.
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll wrap up then, guys. Does anyone else have any final things they want to say so Marsha can go and eat dinner?
Well, I just want to say that, I mean, this type of a thing that you're doing, Tanya, and your magazine, and Teresa, and I mean, everybody here, it's just so fabulous to reach other people. I always say, reach one heart and you'll be happy. Just one.
Yes. And Marsha, we have to meet at Panera again soon.
Okay, it's a deal.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being part of the conversation, to the panel of amazing child-free women that I'd like to call you all my friends, because I think we have so much in common and a lot of connection, and I love what everyone's doing. And I just think it's amazing that we're all out there and doing this. Thank you so much for taking time out of your International Child-Free Day to have this conversation. And I think we can certainly look at how we can take some of this that we've spoken about today and look at little practical things that we can do moving forward and get that out into our communities, because I think this is really important to be looking at what our next steps are.
Yes,
So,
take action.
Yes,
action.
Yes. That's the takeaway. That's the takeaway.
Margaret, congratulations.
Yes.
Yay.
Will this be available? It was a question. Will this be available later to watch? There will be a link, right?
Yes. So I will. I'm recording this, so I will put it up on Childfree TV so people can, because there's a lot of people that didn't join in. Because I know here in Australia, a lot of people are at work, and it's later in the day in other places. So assuming a lot.
Where is it on Childfree
TV?
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
Because
I'm gonna share with my email list this week. So.
Awesome. Well, I'll send you guys the links. I'll send you guys the direct link.
Everybody,
thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much, Tanya.
Thanks, Tanya.
Have a fabulous day, evening. Okay. Go to sleep, Margaret, because I know it's crazy time.
I know.
Yes. Good night, Margaret.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, all.
See you.
Bye-bye, honey.
Bye.
Ciao.